So every year at my kids' physicals, our pediatrician had them bend over, touch their toes, slowly stand up while he looked at their spine. Every year he said they were fine, but they weren't. So I urge you to watch this video even if you think your kids don't have scoliosis. I also urge you to send this to other parents because there might be other people out there that experienced what we did, which is thinking everything was fine when it wasn't. So a few years ago, one of my boys needed an MRI for something completely unrelated to scoliosis. The orthopedic surgeon noticed some curvature in his spine and sent us for x-rays. So x-rays are really the best way to tell if you have scoliosis. So when the x-ray came back, we saw that he had a really nasty C-curve in his spine. It was 18 degrees tilted to the left. We, of course, were concerned that because that was missed, maybe it was missed in our other children as well. So we brought them to the same surgeon for x-rays. My youngest son, luckily, did not really have much curvature to his spine, but another one of my boys had an S-curve. His was 12 degrees and 9 degrees. So we ended up having two kids with some pretty serious curvature to their spine. And if left unchecked, that can get worse and worse and worse. What we were told by the orthopedic surgeon was that there was nothing we could do. We just had to hope that it didn't get worse, get on the wait list for this one program, the only one that he said would work. And the wait list was 2 years long. And he said by the time we got to 2 years, it might be too late. And so what do they do when it's too late is they put a really, really restrictive brace on the child to try to straighten up their spine. Or if it's beyond bracing, you have surgery to put 2 metal rods on either side of the spine. Now, my boys are super active. They love sports, and I love that they love sports. It's such a huge part of who we are as a family. We're active, and we just enjoy being really active and athletic. And the thought of them never being able to play the sports that they love just broke my heart. And I was not willing to accept this diagnosis of there's nothing you can do but be on a 2-year wait list that you're never gonna get in on, and then it might be too late. Now, you might be wondering why you don't just go straight to the brace. That was one of my questions. You know, if the brace can help, why don't we just do it? And the reason why is because the brace actually constricts their development of their rib cage. It's so tight and so restrictive, and you have to wear it almost 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And because of that, they actually don't develop their lungs and their rib cage properly. And that can have all these other problems down the road, especially if your child is predisposed to viral-induced asthma, like mine are. So we couldn't brace them. We got on a wait list we'd never get into. I did not want to do surgery and take everything away from them that they loved so dearly. Now, it's been said that moms do better research than the FBI, and I have to say I agree with that, at least for myself. So that's what I did. I launched into research mode. So in this video, I want to share with you the research that I did and what we did as a family. Make sure you stay tuned all the way to the end so we can talk about what the end results were. Okay, so the first thing that you need to understand is that your entire body is connected. Your spine isn't its own deal over there doing its own thing. It is connected to your fascia, your muscles, your skull development, your neurological system, and more. So some of these therapies that I'm going to talk about that we did might seem really random and unrelated at first glance, but if you understand how interconnected your body is, it's going to make a lot more sense. So step one before we did anything else was a frenectomy. What a frenectomy is a simple surgery to untether the bottom of your tongue. So in certain people, their tongue is tied too closely down to the bottom of their mouth. Because of that, it does not freely go up to the roof of your mouth. Now what that does is it actually impacts the way that your face is shaped and the way that your face grows. Now remember, everything is connected, so that can actually impact the way your neck curvature is developing, the way your spine is developing, and on and on. Another problem that you can have with a tongue that's tethered too tightly down to the bottom of your mouth is that fascia that I talked about earlier. So sometimes it can be tied more to one side or the other. And if the tongue is tied too deeply to one side, pulling on that fascia, that can then pull the spine in the wrong direction as well. So the first thing that we did with the boys was frenectomies on all 3 of them. The surgery itself is fairly painless. We used a laser. Some doctors use scissors and sutures. Ours just used a laser, and there's no need for stitches after that. So the surgery itself, they feel nothing with this laser. They get an injection of lidocaine before it begins, and so that's pretty painless. The healing process can be a little bit painful, but we used some homeopathic treatments like arnica and trameal to help reduce the swelling, reduce the inflammation, and control the pain. So there was a little bit of a healing process going on there, but it ended up healing up really well, and it was definitely a really important first step for us and our family. Once that tongue was freed up, the next step was figuring out how to make it work right within the body and have it continue to develop properly so that the facial structure can develop properly, the fascia can be freed up, and on and on and on. What I did was research and try to find a specialist in this area. So I found Sarah Hornsby of Myofascial. I did a video interview where her and I chat about a whole host of different things, scoliosis being one of them. So if you're interested in learning more about Sarah and her work, make sure you check out the video interview that we did together. So Sarah came on board and we did something called myofunctional therapy. What this was kind of retraining the tongue, the jaw muscles, the mouth, the face, all to work the way it was supposed to if they had not needed that frenectomy. So remember, things were tethered down for so long. My kids are now 9 years old, 11 years old, and 13 years old, and this was just a few years ago. So they had a whole lifetime of their tongue being in kind of the wrong position. So Sarah had daily exercises for us that we had to do to try to retrain the tongue to be in the proper position, which then plays into the fascia and on, like I said. And then we had weekly Skype sessions to show Sarah our progress with the exercises. There was a little bit of bribing involved with the kids. They didn't always want to do the exercises, but we got through it. And again, I think it was a really important next step in the process of reversing their scoliosis. Another therapy that we did is called myofascial massage. We found a specialist that works on kids with scoliosis. So we were really, really lucky in that realm. And she was trained in finding trigger points and really tight spots in their spines to release those on a deep fascia level. Now, what happens when you have scoliosis is that your spine is so used to going a certain way, the muscles are formed around that. The fascia is formed around that. So you have to really break that pattern to be able to reverse that curvature. So our myofascial massage therapist worked really hard at releasing those tight spots and starting to straighten out the curvature of their spine so their muscles could find kind of a new home to live in. We did this twice a week at first, then dropped down to once a week, then went down to every other week. And again, it was a fairly intensive round of therapies that we did, a little bit of bribing involved with the kids, but they hung with it, and we saw a lot of nice benefits from that, not just from a scoliosis standpoint, but also their posture began to improve. That hunched over kind of look that kids get because they're hunched over desks all day, that started to straighten up. They had less headaches, less back pain, less neck pain. So the myofascial massage was really key in a lot of areas. And I want you to remember that the order is important here. If we had just taken them to the myofascial massage therapist, it would be like trying to fix a rubber band without snipping it. Every time you pull on it and you let go, it's just gonna snap right back. So their spines would have probably done something similar had we not done the frenectomy and the myofunctional therapy prior. It's like we snipped the rubber band. They were then loose lumps of clay for her to be able to start to reshape and reform with her myofascial massage. Another thing that our myofascial massage therapist did that was huge was showing my boys how to sleep. Honestly, it was something that had never crossed my mind before. She showed them that when they sleep only on their sides, their neck goes up and then slumps down, and then if their legs aren't in proper position, then their spine goes up. They're essentially creating their scoliosis by the way that they slept. So that was huge. She had us go out and buy special pillows, so we all went to the store and tried out all the different ones and saw where do they fit and how do they fit. I have one son that is an adamant side sleeper, so she said, fine, you can stay sleeping on your side, but your pillow needs to be very flat under your head so that your neck can stay straight. Then you need to have a pillow that you're holding onto with your arms to keep that rib cage straight. Then you need a pillow between your legs, because if one collapses down off the other, that causes an SI, or sacroiliac joint rotation, which then can enhance curvature as well. One other thing you need to know about scoliosis, it's not always just the spine is one way or the other, it torques and twists as well. So paying attention to that SI joint is very important, which she noticed with the sleep, and I'm going to talk about that with a chiropractor in a second as well. So my side sleeper son had a flatter pillow under his head, a pillow to hug, a pillow between his knees. He still to this day sleeps this way. It's been 2 years. So it takes forever to kind of get him ready for his bed, but it was a truly important step in starting to help reverse his scoliosis. And he actually sleeps better and is more comfortable and has far less back pain now that he's sleeping that way as well. I have another son, he kind of moves around. So we have the pillows ready for him. She made sure that his neck pillow was definitely flatter, so we're not causing curvature there. And then he has pillows on either side. So if he goes to one side, there's one there, or the other side, there's one there. So we had to figure out kind of different configurations that worked for each child. But our myofascial massage therapist was instrumental in helping us figure out the exact posture that they needed to be in to prevent that curvature from getting worse and to actually start to help reverse it. The next therapy that we did is called craniosacral therapy. So we all have plates that make up our skull, and sometimes they get stuck in the wrong position. And if they're stuck, there's not enough room for flow with the glymphatic system. Now, if you haven't heard of the glymphatic system, it's essentially an extension of the lymphatic system, which I'm sure you've heard of. We have the glymphatic system in our brain. Can't work properly if the plates are stuck in the wrong place. In addition to the glymphatic system not being able to work properly, if those plates are stuck out of alignment, remember, your skull is connected to your skull, so that can end up forcing your skull out of alignment as well. So it's really important to get everything on board. Like I said, when we're talking about reversing scoliosis, you need to address the fascia and the muscles and the spine itself, and then also the plates in your head, also known as craniosacral therapy. Now, a side benefit of craniosacral therapy is that it's very relaxing. So I had one kid in particular that has a little bit of anxiety, and we found that it dissipated the more we did craniosacral therapy. The fun thing about some of these therapies, although it was a lot of work, it was very labor intensive, we saw benefits in multiple areas, not just in scoliosis. So it was really rewarding to be able to go through this process and help them in various different ways. Now, yet another therapy we did is called osteopathic manipulation. If you're looking for a doctor that does this, you're going to look for a doctor that has D.O. after their name. That means doctor of osteopathy. So I found a DO that did osteopathic therapy. This is sort of similar to what the myofascial massage therapist did, but a little bit more targeted on trigger points specifically. So she would find various trigger points around the body, not even anywhere near the spine sometimes. It would be on the outside of a knee or on a hip or by a sacroiliac joint like I talked about before. She would find those trigger points and release them so that the muscle around that trigger point could then be released. And so a big part of reversing scoliosis is retraining those tight spots and those tight muscles that have been so used to being in a certain curvature or torque or rotation. We really need to train the body to unwind all of this. But there was a lot of times where she'd have to redo the same trigger point again and again and again because the body just wasn't quite used to its new position. It wanted to go back to what it was used to and hold on there. And so by repeating these trigger point therapies over and over, the body finally was able to let go and relearn its new position, which is the one that we wanted for it, reversing that scoliosis. Now, another therapy we did was chiropractic. That's probably one of the first ones that you think of when you think of scoliosis, and rightfully so. They can do adjustments to your spine, and that was definitely a big part of our scoliosis treatment as well. But once again, we need to remember the order here is really important. If we had gone straight to chiropractic, had them just do an adjustment, their body likely would have gone right back to that old spot if we hadn't been working on relaxing the fascia, relaxing the muscles, relaxing the trigger points, sleeping in the right way, craniosacral therapy, myofunctional therapy, all those other things really set the stage for the chiropractic treatments to hold and to work. And one of the focuses of the chiropractic treatment was that SI joint and the way that the hips were. Because if the hips are off, then the spine is going to compensate for that. And that's where you can see a lot of curvature come in. Sometimes it results in a C curve, which is what one of my boys had. Sometimes it results in the S curve like the other child has. And the reason for that S curve is that if your hips are off, your spine will start to go one way. And then sometimes your brain says, no, I don't want to be sideways, I want to go the other way. And it will actually curve it in the other way. And so you can end up, depending on how the brain perceives what's going on, with either a C curve or an S curve. And so our chiropractor worked on fixing their hip levels so that their spine didn't need to do any curvature. Also working on that SI joint rotation to make sure that their spine wasn't torquing while it was twisting. So because we had laid the groundwork really well, once we went in and started chiropractic treatments, they were able to hold fairly well. We didn't have to go too frequently. In the beginning, it was once a week, then it went down to once a month, and then now we're in more of a maintenance phase where we only go a couple times a year just to make sure everything's in alignment, which is especially important for my boys because they are crazy and they're all over the place and running and jumping and falling all the time. And when you fall, you can knock things out of alignment. And so quick little chiropractic checkups are really great at making sure that things are exactly where they're supposed to be. At this point, you're probably wondering if all I did for an entire year was this. And I have to be honest, it kind of was. That doesn't mean that you have to do that. But for me, this was my mission. I did not work. I skipped social outings. I took time off from school. I focused in on this and I helped them do the exercises and I took them to the appointments and I dove into the research. And part of the reason why I was so aggressive in researching and implementing these therapies was because I knew that someday I would be able to help someone else with this. I really wanted to figure this out and crack this code so I could share it with people like you, because it broke my heart one day when we were in the hospital getting a routine checkup for an x-ray. And we sat down next to a boy that was 18 and he had had surgery to have rods put in and he couldn't put his shoes on. His father had to help him put his shoes on. And I'm gonna cry. This is a huge mission of mine. This is why I do what I do. This is why I wake up every day. This is why I'm making these videos for you guys. This is why I work with clients. I want everyone to know that even though you're told there's nothing you can do, there is always something you can do. And so when I was told by our orthopedic surgeon that there's nothing we can do, this could get worse, it could stay the same, they could end up in a brace, they could end up with surgery, I was simply not willing to accept that. I've come to the point in my career as a health and wellness advocate that I know that no doesn't mean no. And there's nothing we can do just means that person doesn't know the answer. And so it's up to us as parents to advocate for our kids, or as an adult to advocate for yourself and to find a solution. And so that's why I poured everything for a year straight into reversing their scoliosis, because I don't want to see another child end up like that boy that couldn't put on his own shoes because his rods were taking up his whole spine and he literally couldn't bend. I didn't want that for my kids, and I don't want that for your kids. I don't want that for anyone. And so you don't necessarily need to do every single thing that I did. I realized it was a lot, and not everyone can take a year off from work and school and everything to do everything. But I wanted to show you what's possible. I wanted to walk you through the options, because what you can do is start to take this and piece together what will work for you, what will work for your family. Which therapies does your child need? Maybe they don't need all of them. Maybe they don't need a frenectomy or craniosacral therapy. Maybe they just need a chiropractor and myofascial massage, and you can just do those two things and you're fine. So you need to figure out what's right for you and what your child needs. Now, I'm gonna get to the ending. What happened? So we did all of this for a year. We had a checkup at 6 months, and the doctor noticed that the curve seemed to have been reversing, and he was slightly surprised, didn't seem to care as much as I thought he would. I thought he'd be really excited and want to know what I did. Not really. He was mildly surprised, thought, okay, let's see you again in 6 more months. We went back 6 months later, and I'm really, really excited to say that their curves were gone. They no longer have diagnosable scoliosis. My son that had an S-curve of 12 and 9 ended up with an S-curve of 0 and 2. Now, one thing you need to know about scoliosis is that everybody does have some curvature in their spine, and the medical community does not diagnose it as scoliosis unless it is 10 or above. So for him to be 0 and 2 is mind-blowing. That's nowhere near scoliosis diagnosis, so huge changes for him. My older son, his was 18 C-curve. We got it all the way down to 9. So we got under that diagnosis of scoliosis. Again, he no longer has diagnosable scoliosis. Me being me, I still want to keep working on it. We still take him in here and there for treatments. At the time of filming right now, it's COVID time. No one can go anywhere or do anything. But once we are allowed to, we're going to get back into some of those therapies. I would like to see his closer to his brothers, closer to 0 as well. But to just go from 18 to 9 and to no longer have that label of scoliosis is amazing. But what's more amazing is that I now know that you can reverse a curve. After I was told you can't reverse a curve except maybe this one physical therapist with a 2-year waiting list. I was told that was the only option. And now I know there's other options. Now I know that we can fix this. We have the power to fix this. So I want to ask you a favor. I want to ask that you hit the share button and you share this with a couple other parents out there. Let's start to get this out into the world, because I don't want other parents to think that their kid is okay until it gets so bad that it's diagnosed, and it's going to be a lot harder at that point to reverse. And I also do not want any parents out there with this diagnosis to think there's no hope and there's nothing you can do. Because as you just saw from my story, there's nothing further from the truth. There is always something you can do. So let's share this video. Let's share the message of hope. Don't forget to hit the subscribe and notification bell so you don't miss any new videos that come out every Tuesday and Thursday. Thanks for watching.